Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Joe Davich. I'm the Executive Director at the Georgia Center for the Book. And on behalf of the Georgia Center for the Book and DeKalb County Public Library, welcome to the 7th Annual Fall Book Preview. I know that for a long while that we've been sheltering in our homes and trying to socially distance as best we can, but this has been such a popular program for the last few years that we really decided that we needed to try and make this as interactive and as fun for you all as possible. So thank you for allowing us into your homes this afternoon. We are very excited to show you some of the new titles that are coming out this fall. I'm sure you're very excited to see them. Most of you right now would probably be queuing up at the library to try and get some of the best spots in line to get led into the auditorium. And just so you know, yes, we are going to do a raffle as we have in years before. It will be a little different thanks to the global pandemic, but as you know, we asked you to provide your email address and your home address when you signed up for your Eventbrite ticket. That is because we are going to be dropping these very lovely bags off curbside for all of those of you who live in Fulton and DeKalb counties. They are going to be chock full of books that are coming out, some books that have already been published, books that will be published a little soon, but we will contact you after the presentation and let you know if your name has been picked and when you can open your front door and see one of these lovely bags sitting on your porch. It's a fun way to just make this a little brighter during this time, and so many independent bookstores were doing home delivery that we thought, why not? Let's just go ahead and jump on the bandwagon and bring books to our patrons. So we have great presentations for you this afternoon from Tony Hetzel, Diane Kerpa, and Jessica Pearson about all the wonderful books that are coming from Penguin Random House this fall. So grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, sit on back in your favorite book reading chair that you will be snuggling up in this fall and enjoy some of these books. So welcome, Tony, Diane, and Jessica. Over to you all.
Well, wonderful. Thank you guys all for being here. As Joe said, we've been doing this for many years, and we are so excited that in this, excuse me, strange virtual world that we're living in, we can keep the tradition alive. My name is Jessica Pearson. I'm going to kick us off, and Tony and Diane, my colleagues, are going to be peppered in throughout the conversation. We're just going to go back and forth between our titles, so you don't have to listen to one voice for too long. And we're here to talk to you about our favorite fiction titles, some authors that you'll see this year that you will recognize, and some new debuts. We also have nonfiction titles that we're going to share with you, some cookbooks, some poetry, some memoirs, all the things that we're really looking forward to this fall. So I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm sure if I was at the library, I'd recognize many of your faces. But like I said, glad to be back, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So fiction favorites. My first book that I'm excited to talk to you about is Carl Hiaasen's Squeeze Me. This goes on sale tomorrow, and Carl is coming back to us with his very, very typical, irreverent, funny, off-kilter sense of humor in this book. It opens at a celebrity gala in Palm Beach, Florida. They are all coming together, the wealthy elite, to advocate for the cause of eradicating irritable bowel syndrome across the entire world. So any excuse, no matter the cause, no matter the disease, to throw a big gala fundraiser. That's our opening setting. And we meet Kitty Pugh Fitzgibbons, who is the character of this book for just a brief moment. She goes missing at this gala fundraiser, and her disappearance sparks off a mystery that Carl follows throughout the book. You will recognize the leader that is going to come as no surprise to any of you, the Winter White House. It features Trump and his band of very devoted debutantes and wealthy heiresses, the Patussis, that are his coterie of women that stand beside him no matter what. And they are determined to find out what's happened to Kiki after the president says that it has been a band of marauding immigrants that have to do with her disappearance. This is, of course, not true. What actually happens is even crazier than you could imagine. So Carl is hilarious. This is topical but funny, and he kicked off the book launch with a fresh air interview last week that I would definitely recommend checking out if you haven't heard about it, and look for this on shelves tomorrow. And now to the next book. Tony, do you want to advance us? There we go.
All right, so I'm Tony Hetzel. I live here in Decatur, Georgia. And if you've been to the library to see one of these fall previews, then you've probably seen me there because I've been at every one. So we miss seeing your faces, but we're glad that you could join us today. And I want to start off with a new book by Lee Child, the newest Jack Reacher. And I normally don't spend a lot of time talking about this book since he's a #1 New York Times bestseller, but I wanted to spend a few minutes because of a couple of reasons. The first one is that this book is set in the South, and I wanted to read a little snippet to set up the book. It says, "It's close to midnight on a Saturday night when Jack Reacher gets off a bus at the Greyhound station in Nashville. Jack Reacher is in no hurry. He has no appointments to keep, no people to see, no scores to settle, not yet anyway. But in the early morning hours, under particular circumstances, a familiar thought will be snaking through his sharp, instinctual lizard brain, a voice telling him to walk away. Of course, this wouldn't be the first time he listened to his gut instead. So if that doesn't sound like classic Jack Reacher, then I don't know what does. Secondly, if you haven't heard, Lee Child has announced his retirement to his fans. So he's brought his brother Andrew on to co-write this book with him. And after this book, he will continue to have his a say in the character, but he's going to turn it over to his brother's capable pen. So I hope that you enjoy this book as much as the previous 24 Jack Reacher novels. Let me see if I can get this. Okay.
Good afternoon. It's certainly a pleasure to be in front of you again, although we all wish we could be in a beautiful Decatur, but I'm down at the Panhandle of Florida, and we're getting the rain bands from hurricane #1, I guess, but no damage, just a bunch of rain, that's all. I'd like to start today with Tana French's new novel, The Searcher. And it's a standalone, and she offers a departure from her usual style and characters we're accustomed to in the Dublin Murder Squad novels, and also in her previous standalone novel, The Witch Elm. For starters, she's written in the third person, that's new for her, and she, of all things, has given us an American as her lead character. He's a retired veteran of the Chicago Police Force, and she describes him as searching a small place, a small town, and a small country. He comes to live in the remote village in West Ireland, buys a worn-down cottage as a live-in fixer-upper, and he plans to walk the paths through the mountains to put his police work in the past. But he has a feeling that somebody is watching him, and he's correct. A local boy who appeals to him for help in finding his missing brother. What follows is the story of the town, the land, and its people. As usual, her characters are so well drawn, and the town itself is really a character as well. It's not a standard crime novel or a crime mystery, but a wonderful depiction of a slice of Ireland and its people, with an added bonus of a dramatic reveal at the last chapter.
Okay, so I am back to tell you guys about John Grisham and his new novel, A Time for Mercy. This is an exciting year because we've been lucky to get 2 Grishams. We had Camino Winds, which published back in April, and we can say this will officially now be a new series for John, the Camino series, that being the second book. But now he's back with his traditional fall legal thriller. In this book, A Time for Mercy, we go back to Ford County, which was the setting of one of his most popular books, A Time to Kill. We also get the character Jack Brigance, who was featured in A Time to Kill. He's back in this book. And John's editor, Suzanne Hers, in what she says she swears is not hyperbole, she says she possibly has read the best courtroom drama scene that Grisham has ever written in A Time for Mercy. So this is going to be a really exciting book for all of you Grisham fans. There's some throwback with these old characters and this old setting that I'm sure you'll be excited to return to. And speaking of John Grisham, I just wanted to take a moment. I forgot to mention this when I was talking about Carl Hyacин's book, but Squeeze Me goes on sale tomorrow, and Grisham and Carl Hyacin will be in conversation launching Carl's new book at one of our Southern Accounts Books and Books, which is based out of Miami. So if you're interested in tuning in for that virtual event, if either of those authors are ones that you like, that will be on August 27th, and I will put a link to the virtual event in the chat. It's a free event, and you can just click on and see some of your favorite authors.
All right, The Book of Two Ways by Jodi Picoult. It's been 2 years since Jodi Picoult has had a new book, and I know her fans are very eager to get something from her. So this is going to be her first non-issue related book, and instead she explores a concept from ancient Egyptian burial text where 2 different routes were mapped out for the deceased to navigate the afterlife. So the story is a woman named Dawn Edelstein survives a plane crash, but as she's going down, she realizes that it's not her husband and daughter she's thinking of, but a man from her past. And when she's released from the hospital, they offer her transportation anywhere she wants to go, but which is it to be? So I know that Jodi Picoult's fans love the twist that she puts in a book. And in this one, she follows the 2 different scenarios of Dawn's life, if she goes home or if she goes to find this man from her past. So she writes these narratives side by side, uncovering secrets and doubts along the way. So I think that this could be a really good book for book clubs. If you think about the question, think of the one who got away. What if you could have both lives or have a different choice?
Sigrid Nunez won the National Book Award in 2018 for her novel, The Friend. And after a decades-long career with many other prizes and accolades, she became an overnight literary sensation. Well, now she's back with her 8th novel, What Are You Going Through?, which follows a woman through what seems random encounters and thoughts, almost a stream of consciousness. It's very typical of the way Nunez writes, until a somewhat casual friend with terminal cancer asks her to be with her as she prepares to end her life. Not to help her die, but to be there in the time leading up to that final event. The novel goes on to delicately speak to life, health, companionship, but in a manner that Nunez's agent says, and I quote, "Sigrid's writing is so funny. She has such a sardonic voice, dark humor with such great compassion," end quote. And I'll add that the novel asks difficult questions and certainly requires serious contemplation, lots of things to talk about in book club. And yes, as in The Friend, which has its dog, where are you going through? What are you going through, rather? Does have its kitty cat.
Tony, can you? Thanks for bearing with us, guys. Okay, speaking of another author that I know we all love, Robert Harris. He is bringing back his classic historical World War II fiction. You may remember Robert Harris, his last World War II novel was called Munich, and he is probably best known for his Cicero trilogy. In this book, we have the setting, November 1944. Willy Graf, who's a German rocket engineer, is launching Nazi Germany's V-2 rockets at London from occupied Holland, Kay Connolly, once an actress and now a young English intelligence officer, ships out for Belgium to locate the launch sites and neutralize the threat. But when rumors of a defector circulate through the German ranks, Graf becomes a suspect. So they are not known to each other, but they find themselves on opposite sides in the hunt for the saboteur. And it's these twin stories that kind of play out against the background of the German missile campaign, which is definitely one of the most epic but least explored episodes of the Second World War. Robert Harris, like I said, is just giving us what he gives us best, which is solid historical World War II fiction. And this book will be coming out at the end of September.
Okay, so I'm very excited to tell you about this next book. It's called Ready Player 2 by Ernie Klein. If you're not familiar with this author, he had a previous book called Ready Player 1, and it was set in the near future, and most of the activity in the book takes place on a virtual world called Oasis. And our main character there's name is Wade Watts, and he is playing these games, trying to find Easter eggs that were hidden by the game's creator. But I don't want to give too much away. I highly encourage you to read that book before Ready Player 2 comes out. The book, I will tell you though, was very nostalgic for the 1980s, including song references and classic video games. And as you can see on the screen, the author drives a DeLorean, which was a very popular car in the 80s. So Ready Player 2, we're back with Wade Watts, and he is taking on new technology that blurs the lines between the virtual and the real even more, making Oasis a very addictive place to be. He's expanding that technology, but he comes up against a new riddle to be solved and a new unimaginable enemy. So Ready Player 1 was adapted for film, and the PBS's Great American Reads listed it as one of America's 100 best loved books. So very exciting.
Alrighty, I am next with Ken Follett and his new novel. It's the fourth in his Kingsbridge series, which he launched more than 30 years ago with the very beloved Pillars of the Earth. But this novel takes place before the other three books. It's in a way, it's a prequel. So the novel is set around the year 997. It's about 150 years before the events in Pillars of the Earth. It follows three main characters. Edgar, a young boat builder, he was forced to flee his home in the aftermath of a Viking invasion. The second is Ragna. She's a beautiful Norman noblewoman who moves to the area, which will become Kingsbridge. And lastly, Bishop Winston, and he's a power-hungry monk. He's involved with conflict with just about everybody, it seems. Typical for Follett, there are numerous love interests and conflicted motives for all the major characters, and leading to murder, sex, and unholy ambition. As with all the books in the Kingsbridge series, the pages are filled with the good and the bad, the slaves, rapists, fornicators, nobles, murderers, as well as kind and decent people, the men of the cloth. Follett, he definitely weaves a very detailed story of this area of England, of Kingsbridge, which will feature in the first three books of the series.
Okay, so I'm excited to talk to you about Joe Nesbo. Joe Nesbo is definitely known as one of the almost kings of Nordic noir. He is probably best known for his Harry Hole series, which is a detective series featuring the main character of Harry Hole. This time we're getting something a little different from Nesbo. This is a standalone novel called The Kingdom, and it's also set in America, which is unique and new for him. The story centers around two brothers, Roy and Carl. Roy has never left the quiet mountain town that he grew up in, unlike his little brother Carl, who just couldn't wait to get out and escape from a troubled past. Just like everyone else in town, Roy believed Carl was gone for good, but he ends up coming back to his hometown with big plans. And when he returns, he has a mysterious new wife and a business opportunity that seems just too good to be true. After his return, there's some simmering tensions that begin to surface, and unexplained deaths in the town's past come under new scrutiny. And so there are soon powerful players that are set on taking the brothers down by exposing a role in this town's very sordid history that centers around these two men. So that's kind of the setting for the book. There's obviously, it's a crime procedural like Nesbo is best known for, and it's certainly one that is a page turner. So we will be getting that at the end of September, and I encourage you to keep your eyes peeled for it.
All right, so I wanted to talk to you about A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. She is known for a long-running series, a 9-book fantasy series called Temeraire. More recently, she's written 2 novels based on classic fairy tales, Spinning Silver and Uprooted, which are on your screen there. But we're hoping that this book is going to make her name a household name this fall. So this book, I'm thinking of Harry Potter for adults. What I love about it is that she just drops you down into the action at a place called Scholomance, which is a magical academy. There's a young woman, a sorceress, who's learning to use her powers, which are darker than the other students. The strong female character makes this book very timely. The lively, quick action keeps your attention, and the fantastic cliffhanger is going to keep you coming back for another book. So we will have a second book in the trilogy out in 2021.
Nick Hornby is back. You know him from High Fidelity quite a few years ago now, and About a Boy was a wonderful novel about which they made a wonderful movie. And his new book is Just Like You. It's set in London. It's a novel of a woman, Lucy. She's a 41-year-old school teacher with 2 teenage sons who's in the process of a divorce. And Joseph, a much younger man, just 22, working in a local butcher shop and with other part-time jobs, including babysitting. He still lives at home. She's white, he's black. As Lucy meets Joseph, she really isn't looking for love. She's more in the market for a babysitter. So we have a burgeoning relationship story of 2 people coming to love from different classes, different cultures, and different generations, overcoming what might be insurmountable obstacles. As Nick Hornby himself said about his book, I quote, "It's one of my favorite topics, people connecting with each other against all odds, across different backgrounds of class or age or race, and finding out what a surprising amount they share with each other." In the fashion we certainly expect from Nick Hornby, the novel is told in a very warm, humorous, and tender manner.
I'm excited to tell you about The Archer by Paulo Coelho. We know Paulo best for his what many would call life-changing book, The Alchemist. And in this new fable, we are going back to his spiritual guidance and wisdom. The Archer features Tetsuya. He's a man who was once famous for his prodigious gift with a bow and an arrow, but who has since retired from public life. And then there's the boy who comes searching for him. The boy has many questions, and in answering them, Tetsuya illustrates the way of the bow and the tenets of a meaningful life. This story suggests that living without a connection between action and soul cannot fulfill, and that a life constricted by fear of rejection or failure is not a life worth living. Instead, one must take risks, build courage, and embrace the unexpected journey that fate has to offer. So this is a slim little book. It's only $21, and like I said, it reads as a fable of spiritual guidance and wisdom between these 2 characters as they hash out the conversations with archery as the basis for these discussions. And this one goes on sale on November 10th.
All right, so now I want to talk to you about The Wonder Boy of Whistle Stop by Fannie Flagg. It has been decades since Fannie Flagg introduced us to the wholesome people in Whistle Stop, Alabama, in her classic novel, Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. But now she has an opportunity to introduce those characters to a whole new generation of readers. In this book, Bud Threadgood, who's the son of Ruthie and Iggy, the original owners of the cafe, goes back to Whistle Stop to reconnect with his past. Is folksy and charming, and Fannie Flagg's distinctive voice shines through in this Southern tale. Many of the characters were in that original story, but you definitely don't have to have read that in order to enjoy this one. It's very easy to read without having read that book. I think with all the craziness going on in the world today, this is a great way to distract yourself from the current events with her infectious humor, her strong sense of values, and her understanding of human nature.
Okay, speaking of distracting yourself from the current climate that we're all living in, I would highly encourage, if you're looking for something escapist and just feel good and cozy and delightful, then I would say Perestroika in Paris is the book for you. Jane Smiley, known for her Last 100 Years trilogy, is now giving us this beautiful novel about a unlikely group of friends in Paris that include a racehorse who has escaped and is being hidden by a young boy named Etienne who befriends him. There's also a duo of ducks, there's a dog, there's a raven. All of these animals talk amongst themselves and to Etienne. And as they make their way through the changing of the seasons in Paris, heading into the cold weather and the Christmas holiday, it will remain to be seen if this racehorse can stay hidden on the streets of Paris, and what this friendship will turn into as they navigate some of the challenges of his cast of colorful animal friends. It's really a sweet novel. Like I said, it's just very escapist and feel good. It kind of reminds me of A Wind in the Willows for adults. And that goes on sale December 1st. And then I wanted to just mention, since I know there's a lot of Alexander McCall Smith fans out there, we always have a new detective agency novel from him. So this will be number 21, going on sale mid-October. And then Alexander has given us these lovely little standalone books that are often about romance and relationships. And he has another one called Pianos and Flowers. This doesn't go on sale until January, so it's a little later, but it's a beautiful look at relationship and the relationship between he and his wife. It's a collection of essays. Thanks. Okay.
Alrighty. Actually, this would be a good comparison title to Alexander McCall Smith's books. You don't know Richard Osman, but he's worked as an executive producer in quite a few British TV shows. His popularity and knowledge of trivia has led him to his own BBC quiz show, and he's the host of a very, very popular show there called Pointless. His Thursday Murder Club is the launch of a new mystery feature featuring a young constable. Her name is Donna de Freitas, who visits a retirement village to talk to the residents about practical tips for home security. 4 septuagenarians in the audience are members of their self-styled Thursday Murder Club, who meet weekly to discuss unsolved crimes. The club members arrange for Donna to be assigned to a homicide case to which they have a connection by manipulating her boss so that they can get access as well. Osmond said in an interview, quote, "The joy of writing this series was that my 4 detectives might look gentle and harmless on the outside, but they are far from that on the inside. And all 4 of them are overlooked and underestimated throughout by suspects, by cops, and by everybody."
Okay, The Transcendent Kingdom. This is by far my favorite book on the fall list. I absolutely love this novel. You may recognize Ya Jessie from her debut, Homegoing, which was released a couple years ago and just had an absolute splash when it landed, with reviewers and critics praising it all up and down. We now are having this follow-up that proves that Jessie is really a literary voice that we're going to be watching for years to come, as this novel is just as brilliant and, if not even possibly stronger than Homegoing. This is the story of a young girl named Gifty. She's a 6th-year PhD candidate in neuroscience at Stanford University. She's studying reward-seeking behavior in mice and the neural circuits of depression and addiction. She's been drawn into this work because her brother Nana was a gifted high school athlete who died of a heroin overdose after an ankle injury left him hooked on Oxycontin. And her mother, who has been completely wrapped up in her grief, is basically living in her bed. So Gifty is determined to discover the scientific basis for the suffering that she sees around her and her family. So she turns to the hard sciences to unlock this mystery. But as she's getting further into her scientific course of study, she also finds herself hungering for her childhood faith, grappling with the evangelical church in which she was raised. This is a really moving portrait of a family of Ghanaian immigrants who are living in Alabama, so it's set in the South. They've been ravaged by depression and addiction and grief, but this really is a novel about faith, science, religion, love. It's exquisitely written. It's an emotionally searing novel, but it really does leave you on a note of optimism and positivity as this family navigates some really tumultuous and painful times. I think that we have seen ecstatic praise coming out from so many different outlets. Entertainment Weekly said that this is poised to be the literary event of the fall, and we've seen media buzzing with anticipation all the way from the New York Times to Vogue to Vulture, Parade magazine. When the book goes on sale, Ya will be all over TV and radio. We have an NPR Weekend Edition booked, and she will also be on Late Night with Seth Meyers, as well as The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. So lots of excitement around this book. I definitely encourage you to check it out. It goes on sale in a week, September 1st.
I am also very excited to introduce you to a new author. Her name is Ka-Ming Chang, and her debut book is Bestiary. So this book is about 3 generations of women in one family that immigrated to the US from Taiwan, a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter. The grandmother keeps the traditions and folklore of her native country alive by passing along stories to her daughter and granddaughter. The mother straddles the line between upholding those traditions and fitting into her new country. And the daughter is trying to make sense of her grandmother's stories while embracing a modern world. The book is imbued with magical realism, as you might tell from the cover. The daughter grows a tiger's tail, which she does not always have control over, and she passes letters with her grandmother, which are transmitted through holes that she's dug in her backyard. The writing in the book is just delightful. I found myself reading this book with a pen and piece of paper beside me so that I could write down my favorite passages, of which there were many. The language is evocative and memorable, and that's because the author is also a poet. She has been praised for her poetry, and she is quite young. She's only 23, so really excited to have this coming out in September.
Brian Washington is a brilliant young author. He's a National Book Award 5 under 35 honoree. He's written for The New Yorker, The New York Times, The Paris Review, and many other publications. We published his short story collection entitled Lot back in just last year, actually. And his new novel, or first novel, I should say, is the story of 2 young guys. Their names are Benson and Mike. They live together in Houston. Mike is a Japanese-American chef, and Benson's a Black daycare teacher. They've been together for a few years now, but they're not sure why they're still a couple. There's sex, of course, in the meals. Mike cooks for Benson, and they do love each other. Soon, Mike finds out that his estranged father is dying in Osaka, just as his mother, Mitsuko, arrives in Houston for a visit. Mitsuko stays on and shares accommodations in their apartment as Mike journeys back to Japan. And one of my favorite characters in the novel is Mike's mother, Mitsuko. She's a hoot. She's very acerbic in her opinions, yet very wise at the end. So Benson in Houston and Mike in Japan come to learn things about themselves and the meaning of everyday life. The changes they go through will either make them break them apart or make them stronger together. Memorial is a funny and profound story of a family. Yes, a different kind of family, but a family nonetheless. And you'll know Brian Washington better. We have terrific publicity lined up for him. There'll be profiles coming in the New York Times, Entertainment Weekly, and NPR Weekend Edition just prior to the book going on sale at the end of October. And it'll be reviewed absolutely everywhere.
Okay, I'm so excited to talk to you about another debut, Fortune Favors the Dead. This is a novel by Stephen Spotswood. I just loved this book so much. I would say if you're a fan of Louise Penny or Alan Bradley, who wrote the Flavia de Luce mysteries, then you'll probably really enjoy this. It's a very classic, well, it's written in the classic style of the hard-boiled noir. It takes place in the 1940s in New York City, and it features this new detective duo that I hope we're going to hear more more from. I would love to see them as a reoccurring duo in a series of books. Willa Jean Parker and Lillian Pentecost, and they work together to solve mysteries. The one that they're working on in this book features a dead heiress who is killed at a party where she is hosting a seance. And when some disturbing information is revealed about her husband, who had previously died in what was a mysterious suicide, she tells everyone to leave the room. The only person left in the room after the seance has been conducted is the heiress, Abigail, and she is alone processing this information when suddenly smoke starts billowing out from under the door. When they break the door down, they find that her head has been smashed in with the crystal ball from the seance, which is now in the fireplace. And so this is, of course, how did it happen? She was behind a locked door. It was in the middle of a big party. And this is the mystery that this detective duo is solving. It's like I said, it's just a great, really classic story. It has all the elements of a page-turning mystery. I was surprised at multiple points, and I certainly did not see the end coming. So I think it's well written, and they're a really fun duo that I hope will, like I said, reappear in more books to come. So that goes on sale October 27th, and I encourage you to check it out.
So Emma Cline is another relatively newcomer to the writing world. She has had one novel called The Girls, which was a runaway bestseller, and she was shortlisted for 2 prominent debut novel prizes for that book. This book is a collection of stories, and I'm a huge fan of short fiction, and I think this collection is stellar. She is very skilled at portraying complex, dangerous, and self-destructive tendencies in individuals and families. What I really enjoyed about these stories is many of them end abruptly, which forces you to contemplate that moment and imagine what was happening in the story after we left the characters. There are 10 stories here, 3 of which have never been published before. The author is the winner of a Plimpton Prize from the Paris Review, and she was named one of Granta's best young American novelists.
I include Danielle Evans' new collection of short stories as new fiction, I guess, a new author, even though she has been published before. In 2010, we published Before You Suffocate Her Own Fool Self. That was her first collection. Now she's back again with this new title, The Office of Historical Corrections. It's a great collection of stories centered around the absurdities of race in America, and we certainly have a lot of that. Evans focuses on particular moments and relationships in her characters' lives in a way that allow them to speak to larger issues of race, culture, and history. She introduces us to Black and multicultural characters who are experiencing the confusions of life, love, lust, and becoming swallowed by grief. Her stories can seem absurd, but they are perfect for these very, very absurd times. They're sharp, pointed, and very, very hip.
Okay, another debut novel on the list is The Bad Muslim Discount. I love this book so much. This is a novel, it's a first-generation immigrant story. It's 1995, and Anyar Faris is a restless and rebellious and very sharp-tongued boy who is doing his best to grow up in Karachi, Pakistan. But as fundamentalism takes root within the social order and the Zealots next door attempt to make Islam great again, his family decides, not quite unanimously, that they're going to start their life over in California. Ironically, Anyar's deeply devout mother and his model Muslim brother adjust very easily to life in America, while his fun-loving father can't find anyone that he relates to. So for his part, in a bit of a rebellious nod, Anyar fully commits to being what he calls a bad Muslim. And so this is going on in one narrative, and then at the same time, thousands of miles away, Safwa is a young girl living in war-torn Baghdad with her grief-stricken, very conservative father, and she will find a very different and far more dangerous path to America, arriving here nonetheless. It's when Anyar and Safwa's worlds collide as 2 young, strong-willed teenagers. Their contradictory, intertwined, fates will rock their community and families. I thought this book had a lot of heart. It's also funny, which I really appreciated. There's a lightness and buoyancy to the writing, which I thought really works against what is some difficult subject matter, but the book never really pulls you down. It's actually, like I said, it's funny, it's very heartfelt. The characters are rich and fully developed. Also, Masood himself is a first-generation immigrant, so the story is very true and resonates with a really authentic feel and tone. So that goes on sale November 17th. Like I said, it's a debut, so a new writer, a new voice to look out for, and I would definitely encourage you to check it out.
Missionaries is definitely not light a novel. It's a novel of war, of incredible violence, of the fog of war, and ultimately to the degrading uselessness of war. It reveals the complexity of interventionist American operations abroad, from Kabul to Medellin. It's told through its four main characters, but focuses on just two: a special forces medic, his name is Mason, and a young woman, her name is Lisette. She's an American journalist. Neither of the two has emerged from America's long wars in the Middle East unscathed. Nonetheless, the war still exerts a very, very compelling draw for them. It's called the noble calling, camaraderie, life and death stakes, call it what you will. The setting is Colombia, where the U.S. has partnered with the local government to stamp out the civil war and keep the predatory narco gangs at bay. Mason is ready for the good war, and Lisette is more than ready to cover it. It's a novel of unrelenting suspense, unsparing drama, certainly with the author's intimate knowledge of geopolitical conflict and definite wisdom about the human heart. The author is Phil Cly. He's a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, and you probably remember his short story collection, Redeployment, published in 2014, where it won the National Book Award for Fiction.
So now we're going to talk about some current events and nonfiction titles, and I'll start off with Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. I hope you've been hearing the buzz about this book. It went on sale earlier in August, and she has been in the media everywhere, and Oprah picked it for her National Book Club. In this book, she discusses that rather than skin color, a system of social hierarchy has shaped America throughout history. She compares the caste systems in India and Nazi Germany, along with the history of racism in America to explore this point. She uses deeply searched narrative and stories about real people to make the book relatable. In her media appearances, I heard over and over that she had compared racism in America to owning an old house. So that was the first section I picked up that I went to when I picked up the book. And I found it to be very relatable and had a lot of good points to make. So, and it's early on in the book, so I think you'll find it very interesting. It's an important and timely book. The author lives here in Atlanta. She has won a Pulitzer Prize, and her debut book, The Warmth of Other Suns, won a National Book Critics Circle Award for nonfiction in 2010.
Joe Marchant's previous book was The Cure. It was published by our Crown division. It was a New York Times bestseller and a Best Science Book of the Year selection by the Times. It describes how describes the science of how the mind has the ability to heal the body, how emotions and beliefs affect health, and how meditation and social connections increase life expectancy. She's back now with another book of the human mind. It's called The Human Cosmos. And she takes a look at how human fascination with the night sky has influenced beliefs throughout history. She goes way back to 2 millennia ago, I guess, to the time of the Lascaux cave paintings in France, through today's theory that stargazing can trigger transcendental states. She's organized her work in chapters, each one focused on different groups of humans and their beliefs about the cosmos over the millennia. This book is about what humans' view of the cosmos has told them about the nature of reality and the meaning of life, about the gods and souls, myths and magical beasts that we've since discarded, and about how scientific view came to dominate in today's world, how in turn that journey has shaped who we are today. She proposes at the end that science is only seeing half of the picture. She says, we can explain stars and galaxies, but what about minds? What about consciousness herself? And she examines that in the final chapters.
Okay, The Quiet Americans. This is definitely poised to be one of our big history heavy hitters this fall. This book takes place during the Cold War era, and it chronicles the exploits of four spies. There was Michael Burke, and he was a charming former football star fallen on hard times. Frank Wisner was the scion of a wealthy Southern family. Peter Sichel was a sophisticated German Jew who escaped the Nazis, and Edward Lansdale was a brilliant ad executive. And these four spies ran covert operations across the globe, trying to outwit the ruthless KGB in Berlin. They parachuted into Eastern Europe, they plot coups, they directed wars against communist insurgents in Asia, but time and time again, their efforts went awry, thwarted by a combination of stupidity and ideological rigidity at the highest levels of government. And more profoundly, and really what the book focuses on, is this decision to abandon American ideals. So the intertwined lives of these men began in a common purpose of defending freedom, but the ravages of the Cold War led them to very different fates. Two end up quitting the CIA in despair, stricken by the moral compromises they had to make. One became the archetype of the duplicitous and destructive American spy, and so one would be so heartbroken that he would take his own life. So The Quiet Americans is the story of these four men. It's also the story of how the United States, at the very pinnacle of its power, managed to permanently damage its moral standing in the world. The author is going to be on NPR's Fresh Air. He'll also be on MSNBC's Morning Joe, and you'll see this reviewed in all the major outlets. So a big history book coming this fall. And you may know Scott Anderson's name from Lawrence in Arabia, which was his book that came out about 10 years ago, immediately hit the New York Times bestseller list and was a huge runaway success. So we've been waiting for a new book from him. It's been almost a decade. And I think The Quiet Americans is going to launch to a lot of strong review and critical fanfare.
At the end of World War II, there remained in Europe a massive population of forced laborers, prisoners of war, Jewish survivors, ex-Polish soldiers, Nazi collaborators, and war criminals. A large portion of these people were from Eastern European nations who refused to go home since their nations fell under communist rule after the war. David Nasaw, who has been a two-time Pulitzer Prize finalist for his previous biographies, brings to light many of these people's individual stories, as well as the stories of larger groups of survivors. He also examines, in a larger sense, the policies of the victorious countries, in which, in many cases, were not sympathetic at all to the plight of the innocent, but rather designed to restrict their possibilities. For instance, in the US, we were deathly afraid of communists entering the country, while we allowed, as quote, untold numbers of anti-Semites, Nazi collaborators, and war criminals to acquire entrance to the United States. So The Last Million is the story of these survivors and those nations that played such an active part in their fates.
So next is Greenlights by Matthew McConaughey, and this probably could have gone in the biography section, but because it's more than that, I wanted to include it here. You know him because of his acting career, where he started his career there in the movie Dazed and Confused. He's also been in the Lincoln car commercials, which can be a little unconventional, but definitely effective. And most recently, he's been very active on social media. He's posted some basically PSAs on Instagram about the importance of wearing a mask during COVID under his alter ego, Bobby Bandito. He's been writing a journal since he was a child, and he has these words of wisdom about seizing the moment and making the most of what you have, which he calls the green lights. So it's his tidbits from him, from his life of success. And I really love this package too. So you've got just the partial cover on there with the case that's printed behind it, which you see there with the green lights on it. So Matthew McConaughey will be everywhere promoting this book in the fall, and it's really fun. So I hope you'll take a peek at it.
In We Gather Together, Denise Kiernan brings us a biography of an idea, gratitude, as a compelling human instinct and a universal concept, more than just a mere holiday. It spans centuries. It's anchored in the strife of the Civil War and driven by the story of Sarah Josepha Hale. She's a widowed mother with no formal schooling who became one of the 19th century's most influential tastemakers, who campaigned for decades to make real an annual day of thanks. Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, Sojourner Truth, Walt Whitman, Norman Rockwell, and many other figures walk through her pages. We Gather Together, it's ultimately a story of her tenacity and dedication, an inspiring tale of how imperfect people in challenging times can create powerful legacies. The book's message of gratitude, especially when embraced during the hardest of times, makes it one to read and share. It will inspire readers to rethink and reclaim what it means to give thanks in this day and age. She's also the author of The Last Castle, which is about the Biltmore estate up in Asheville, and before that, The Girls of Atomic City.
Okay, you may recognize H.W. Brands. He is a house author for us at Knopf, and we get a serious nonfiction history book from him about every year. This season, he's taking on John Brown and Abraham Lincoln in The Zealot and the Emancipator. And this is a look at the fight for slavery, the fight to abolish slavery, the fight for American freedom, but the very different views and opinions that both of these important and pivotal historical figures had about why and how this should happen, that Black Americans gain their freedom. So this goes on sale October 6th, and yeah, keep an eye out for it.
Okay, Wintering is Catherine May's personal examination of the idea that as humans we have and need our fallow seasons, that we must embrace the days when the light is low. She embraces the harshness of light as part of the cycle of nature. She says, quote, "When everything is broken, everything is also up for grabs. That's the gift of winter. It's irresistible." She says change will happen in its wake, whether we like it or not. She considers what she calls the somewhere elseness of winter like a poet. Her writing is wonderful. She has a terrific sense of beauty and appreciation, I guess, of the human comedy against that background. She says we must learn to invite winter in. That is what this book is about. Learning to recognize the process, engage with it mindfully, and even to cherish it. We may never choose to winter, but we can choose how. And I'll say, in a way, we're all wintering right now, so we need to embrace it even if we did not choose it.
All right, so moving on to a couple of cookbooks, I am happy to tell you that Ina Garten's publishing schedule is as reliable as her recipes are, and we are in luck that it is an on year for Ina, and we will have this new cookbook, Modern Comfort Food, in October. She admits in the book that she's been a little grumpier than usual because of the pandemic, and she has been reaching for foods that soothe. So fittingly, she gives us modern spins on classic comfort fare. These are irresistible recipes in all genres, including entertaining for a crowd, which she promises we will do again in the future. If you've heard me present her books before, you know that I love Ina, and she is my go-to for everything because I can depend on her recipes. If I'm looking for a cocktail recipe, a soup, dessert, or even her roast chicken, which is in every book, this is where I turn. So I'm a big fan. I recommend all of her books. But I wanted to introduce you to a new cookbook author. Her name is Nadia Hussein, and her first cookbook to be published in the United States is called Time to Eat. She is a first-generation British Bangladeshi Muslim. She's the mother of 3 children, and she knows that putting food on the table at dinner time can be really difficult when you're juggling a full workload, in addition to, for some people, teaching your children virtual school during the day. But she shows us that with prep and practical shortcuts, you can put dinner on the table in no time. So she has a Netflix show here in the United States called Time to Eat as well, and she shows us tips and tricks on weeknight dinners, making it a breeze. If you haven't watched her yet, she is really funny and relatable. She's completely genuine, and she forgoes all pretension about highbrow cooking to give us family-pleasing, healthy meals that go together in no time, that don't require hours in the kitchen, so you can spend more time with your family and friends. She won the Great British Baking Show in 2015, and since then she has had 4 BBC cooking shows, and she's been a judge on the BBC's Junior Bake Off. In 2021, Clarkson Potter will also publish a baking show by Nadia. Let's see.
Okay, now heading into a collection of biographies and memoirs that we want to share with you. The first is a doorstop of a book at over 1,000 pages, but this is poised to be a big literary publishing event this fall. It's the definitive biography of Sylvia Plath, and I can say that this is probably one of the most interesting and compelling accounts of her life that I've ever read. I feel like it is really, I think, a real ode to her work and ode to her as an artist. There's often a tendency to mythologize Sylvia Plath through her death. And while, of course, we learn about her mental illness, learn about what kind of led her to that fateful moment, I think this just is a much larger and much broader celebration of her work and life. So it's going on sale October 13th. It's bound to get quite a bit of critical attention for the extensiveness of the research, the new information that Heather Clark has been able to unearth with full cooperation from the Plath estate. So definitely one to keep an eye on.
Megan Rapinoe is an icon. You recognize her right away. She's a 2-time World Cup champion and Olympic gold medal winner, and has become a force for social change. In One Life, she gives us a thoughtful and unapologetic discussion of social justice and politics. She was raised in a conservative small town in Northern California. She was the youngest of 6 kids. Her parents encouraged her love for the game of soccer, of course, but also urged her to volunteer at homeless shelters and food banks. This helped to form her passion for community engagement, never wavering all the way through high school and college, and extends to her help in protesting racial injustice and police brutality. She speaks in this book to LGBTQ rights, to women's equality issues, to prisoner support issues, to equal pay for women, and Black Lives Matter. She says the obligation is for all of us to speak, and this is one of my favorite messages from the book. She says, quote, "This is everybody's responsibility, every single person here. It takes everybody. This is my charge to everybody. Do what you can, do what you have to do. Step outside yourself, be more, be better, be bigger than you've ever been before." She ends by saying, we have to be better.
Next is His Truth is Marching On by John Meacham, which is a biography of John Lewis, and it goes on sale tomorrow. I was lucky enough to call John Lewis my congressman for decades, and his death this summer was a huge loss for my district and for our country as a whole. His devotion to issues of civil rights and his quote, "getting in good trouble," were legendary. John Meacham is a presidential historian and has had many notable biographies, including a biography of Andrew Jackson called American Lion, which won a Pulitzer Prize. John Meacham spent hours interviewing John Lewis and his relatives and did deep research into his life to write this biography. John Lewis contributed an afterword. Meacham has a robust media schedule, so you will see him on TV, hear him on the radio, and see abundant print reviews in the days and weeks to come.
Well, I am so excited to share with you a new Rick Bragg, whom I know you guys love. He's such a wonderful storyteller that is beloved in the South. And Where I Come From is a new collection of essays that not new, they're newly collected together for the first time, but these are some of his most irresistible best columns that he has written in Southern Living and Garden Gun for the last decade. And I think right now we can all say that it sounds quite lovely to just fall into a Rick Bragg story. He'll take us back to Possum Trot and back to all of his wonderful, colorful characters. And this is just, I think, going to be wonderful escapist reading for this fall, which I'm sure we're all going to be needing and wanting. That goes on sale on October 27th.
Okay, here's my doorstop for the season. It's almost 1,100 pages, but very accessible, very compelling. It's David Reynolds. He's back with another history or biography in this case. He has written many other histories of figures in the times of America in the period leading up to and through the Civil War. His new biography of Abraham Lincoln is simply entitled Abe. It's a new look into the man and the times so key to the survival of America as we know it. He provides context into Lincoln's early years, which takes the reader well beyond the frontier log splitter tales we've all heard in school. He reveals a young boy who becomes the sought-after country lawyer to the deceptively sophisticated politician and president of the United States. As Reynolds writes, quote, Lincoln, far from distant from his time, was thoroughly immersed in it. He goes on, when he entered the presidency, he was neither inexperienced nor unprepared. To the contrary, he redefined democracy precisely because he had experienced culture in all its dimensions, from high to low, sacred to profane, conservative to radical, sentimental to subversive. Yes, it's a long book, but totally immersive in the life and times of Abe Lincoln.
Oh, sorry. JFK by Frederick Logevall. This is the first in a 2-volume biography of John F. Kennedy. The first installment takes us from his childhood to 1956, where he is preparing to run for the President of the United States. The book addresses several overlooked and underreported statistics about JFK's life, which led us to the tagline, "You don't know Jack." Both Diane and Jess have doorstops at over 1,000 pages, but this one is merely a tome at a little over 800 pages. But being a long book, it is a lively account and an immensely engaging story, and it contains photos throughout. Robert Olin Butler said of the author, he has the eye of a novelist, the cadence of a splendid prose stylist, and a filmmaker's instinct for story. Logevall is a professor at Harvard University. His first book, Embers of War, won a Pulitzer Prize and a Francis Parkman Prize.
Okay, and finally, to round out this category, I have a book called Unsolaced by Gretel Ehrlich. Gretel has been writing for almost 30 years, and I have to say, this is the first time I'd ever encountered her writings, and I'm so excited that there's more that I can go back to. She is a beautiful, beautiful writer. People actually refer to her as the original Rebecca Solnit. So if that type of narrative prose is appealing to you, I would highly encourage you to take a look at Gretel's work. She is best known for her nature writing and her writings about travel and adventure. This is a collection of essays where she talks about some of the amazing trips and adventures that she has been on. She takes us to Greenland, the North Pole. She talks about herding animals in Wyoming and Montana. She takes us to Japan. So I know that a lot of us are homebound these days, and armchair travel is something that can be really fun and get us away from just the ordinariness of our everyday surroundings. This doesn't go on sale until January, but I wanted to just draw your attention to it. And if you like what you read here, then, like I said, she has a pretty extensive backlist of books. Yeah, thank you.
For poetry, I have a new collection of poems by Billy Collins. It's been 4 years since he's had a collection, and his typical style is playful, and the book is packed with his signature quirky humor and small epiphanies grounded in the everyday. In between these poems, such as poems about the correct way to peel a banana, sleeping on his side, or walking under the trees, he offers light meditations on mortality. The collection has more than 50 poems, and none of them have been published before. Billy Collins was the former Poet Laureate of the United States.
Okay, I have this wonderful collection that I'm excited to share with you guys called Together in a Sudden Strangeness. The title of this collection is taken from a Pablo Neruda poem called Keeping Quiet, in which the line says, "We would all be together in a sudden strangeness." And so this collection is about this time that we are living in as the novel coronavirus and its effects began to spread in the US and around the world. Poetry editor Alice Quinn reached out to poets across the country to see if and what they were writing under quarantine. She was so moved and then galvanized by the response that she asked the former director of the Poetry Society of America if they could work together to begin collecting the poems that were arriving in her inbox. And through doing that, she's assembled this various intimate and intricate portrait of our suddenly altered reality. So in these pages, you're going to find poets grieving for relatives they are separated from or recovering from illnesses themselves, attending to suddenly complicated household tasks or turning to literature for strength, considering the bravery of medical workers or working their own shifts at the hospital, and as the Black Lives Matter movement has swept the globe, reflecting on the inequities in our society that amplify sorrow and demand our engagement. The poems are fierce and resilient, wistful, darkly humorous, and emblematically reverent about the earth and the vulnerability of human beings in frightening times. Poems in this collection find the words to describe what can feel unspeakably difficult and strange, providing wisdom, companionship, and depths of feeling that enliven our spirits. So I think this is a really special publication. I will actually say I've been listening to a lot of these poems through the ebook, or excuse me, through the audiobook, and that's also a wonderful way to access the poetry. If you download the audiobook, you can just dip in and listen to a couple poems at a time, and they're read in a beautiful and very reverent way. So that goes on sale November 17th, and I hope you will check it out.
Right. Finna by Nate Marshall. This is a second volume of poetry by Nate Marshall. It's an accessible examination of language that is also intellectually challenging. He uses the Black vernacular as a frame to ask larger questions about how racism continues to determine outcomes for people. The book includes 4 interconnected sections that explore masculinity, the effects of community and familiar relationships, and the role of Black language in imagining of livable future. I picked this book up to get an idea of what his poetry is like and ended up finishing it. It is really engaging, and though quite different from Billy Collins, I did find some similarities. The one thing that I really loved about this collection is that his name is, kind of common. So he Googled his name and he studies the people who have the same name as him, and he writes poems to and about them. So I really hope you'll take a look at Nate Marshall and his poetry.
I am so looking forward to Christmas this year. I'm hoping it will bring a gentle conclusion to this seeming never-ending year of disruption. So with that, here's a perfect literary gift for the Christmas season. It's presented in a beautiful hardcover edition from Penguin Classics. It's a wide-ranging selection of some of the greatest festive stories from around the world of all time. It's a collection of magical, moving, chilling, and surprisingly literary Christmas stories, taking us from frozen Nordic woods to Paris, to a New York speakeasy, to an English country house, to Nigeria, to midnight mass in Rio, and even a story in outer space. The writers include Truman Capote, Shirley Jackson, Angela Carter, Dylan Thomas, Saki, Chekhov, as well as treasures from Europe, Italy, Berlin, Sweden, and the Ukraine. It has Santas, ghosts, trolls, unexpected guests, and curmudgeons, and miracles. And here is Christmas as imagined by some of the greatest short story writers of all time. And I think that concludes our presentation.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Tony, Diane, and Jessica. If any of our attendees have a few quick questions and would like to type them into chat, we can answer those. I just want to remind you as well that we are doing another fall book preview tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. for children and young adult literature that is coming out. And there are some very, very exciting titles, included The Gilded Ones, written by a young lady who attended Spelman. A book that's already out, Mad, Bad, and Dangerous to Know by Samira Ahmed. And of course, Nick Stone has a new one coming out called Dear Justice. Those will be a couple of the featured titles in tomorrow's presentation. And of course, if you're asking about our wonderful little bags of books, we are currently looking at folks who live in Fulton and DeKalb counties. You can go on Eventbrite and of course give your address and contact information, and we will be bringing these wonderful little bags of galleys to your doorstep and dropping them off for you. If of course you would like to maybe pick them up somewhere or make other arrangements, feel free to go ahead and email me and we can make those arrangements for you. And let me look in the chat real quick. So Lauren is asking, will any of those authors be on tour in 2021? I am going to guess some of them will. I am going to guess you'll see a lot of virtual tours this year. Tony, Diane, Jessica, any kind of insight on what tours are looking like in the pandemic?
Well, yes, I think virtual tours are definitely the mode of operation these days. And we haven't, I don't know if Tony and Diane, but I can say on our side, we have not even yet heard when authors will be physically back on the road. But I would say that if you haven't yet experienced, a virtual event, you can find a local bookstore. Many of our local independent bookstores are hosting virtual events. And the cool thing is that even if it's not your local bookstore, you can find a list of these events by going to Penguin Random House's website and typing in, or you can Google virtual events, Penguin Random House, and they will often provide links to bookstores around the country that are hosting virtual events that you can sign on and join. So that seems to be or if you subscribe to your local bookstore, like I know Acapella Books in Atlanta is doing a lot of virtual planning, and so you will find those event listings in their newsletter. I don't know if Tony and Diane, you want to add anything?
You said it perfectly, Jess. Thank you.
Great, and a lot of people, of course, asking questions about the book bags. And just go ahead, someone went ahead and typed my email in the chat section, and go ahead and send your name and information to me. Folks are asking about Cobb County. We are going to try. Let's not forget, we want to get as many of these to folks as possible. It's just Allie and myself driving around, dropping bags of books, but we will try and make it happen for you. So what we'll do is, of course, take all of the emails that we get, put them in our hopper, draw names, and then pack the book bags and arrange them for drop-off. Alexandra, the link to tomorrow's book review for kids and young adults, you can sign up for that on Eventbrite. It will take place the same way that this one did. We will send you the link probably about 2 hours ahead of time, but we will get that taken care for you as well. And you can always just go ahead and email me and I can email you the link as well. That's not a problem. Multiple chats going on. Let's see who else is over here. Excellent, excellent. Go ahead and folks, when you're sending me your information, send it to my email, please, because once we close this out, I don't believe I'll be able to see all of this in the chat. And Allie mentioned you can also email it to her just so we cover all of our bases. Any other questions for our panelists? So just a quick question for you all. And I think there's themes in book publishing as well. There seems to be a lot on the nonfiction side of presidential political biographies going on. Just a sign of the times, do you all think? Or And I see a lot of things, John Lewis, being from West Virginia, I am definitely interested in the H.W. Brands book because of John Brown and his raid on Harper's Ferry. So, do we think folks were just putting their thinking caps on and looking at the political climate and maybe, some of our revered leaders that we want to look at their life and what they did?
I'll just say about my book, Abe Lincoln, or Abe. This book, I'm sure, was a long project. The author, David Reynolds, only writes maybe 8 or, one book every 8 years, 10 years or so. And I'm sure this has been planned out a long time in advance. And of course, well before COVID and well before the extreme disruption of this election. But I'm sure it was planned for the election period. That's the thinking.
A lot of the political biographies are timed, but yeah, many of them, like Dan said, they've been in the works for a long time. So
excellent. All right. Well, there's just like a few random housekeeping questions, but thank you so much, Tony, Diane, and Jessica, for sharing this with us. So I know it's been put in the chat, but just in case you didn't see it, there is Joe's email. DavichJ@DeKalb Library, all spelled out DEKAL, library.org. We don't pronounce the L because it's Georgia, but it's still there, and we'll get you all taken care of. Thank you so very much. We will see you tomorrow at the Children's Fall Book Preview. Have a wonderful evening. Stay safe and keep reading. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.
thank you.
Thank you.